Good afternoon. This is Trifecta Sports Talk. I'm your host, Tanner Rebell. Alongside me, as always, is Evan Cook. Evan, how are you?
Uh, could be better considering what day it is, but overall I'm all right.
Yeah, it was supposed to be opening day for the Boston Red Sox. Unfortunately, it is not opening day, and we don't know when opening day is going to start, unfortunately. Um, there is a bunch of stuff going on for Major League Baseball. There's the stay-at-home initiative, and I think MLB was broadcasting a 2004 um, playoff game for Boston, but the game to watch, in my opinion, is on NESN at 6 p.m., and that is game 2 of the 2013 ALCS. Evan, you were at that game, right?
I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the game, as pretty much all of you probably know, when Ortiz hit the game-tying grand slam off of Joaquin Benoit in the 8th inning. And actually, when the ball went out of the ballpark, I didn't even realize it went out just because I was so far behind third base that I couldn't tell. The only reason why I knew it was actually a home run is because of the crowd reaction. But yeah, that game was absolutely insane. And what was even more insane is when uh, Koji Uehara came in for the 9th inning for the Red Sox. The crowd might have been louder for that than for the Ortiz home run.
So I was actually outside the stadium when Ortiz hit that home run, and I was in the area for the rest of that game. And I actually agree with you. I think the thing is when Koji came in and they played his warm-up song, and that place went absolutely nuts whenever Koji came in, and he was so dynamite. But David Ortiz and that home run is probably the most memorable moment, probably in the last 20 years of Red Sox baseball, outside of Dave Roberts stealing second base.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Just because with everything that happened that year, with the Ortiz home run, it kind of made it like, because up until that point in that ALCS, it was like all Tigers. Like that team was absolute.
That was
Wagon.
a horse. That team. That team was a wagon. Absolutely.
Yeah, like they were built to win the World Series, and then just that home run by Ortiz basically flipped the entire switch for the entire postseason.
I mean, Ortiz put the team on his back in that 2013 run. I mean, without Ortiz, you don't win that title. Not only was he dynamite in the ALCS, but in the World Series. I mean, he put up historic numbers in the World Series.
Yeah.
I think that solidified his Hall of Fame candidacy, in my opinion. I don't know if he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, but that 2013 run, to me, put Ortiz over the top.
Yeah, I mean, he hit, what was it, like 750 in the World Series. In the ALCS, I know he didn't hit that well, but like pretty much every hit was like a, big hit. Like you said, like the grand slam. And then I think he had like 3 more hits in the series, and each one drove in runs.
Yep, absolutely. So that is tonight on NESN at 6 p.m. ALCS Game 2. All-timer really was the comeback. Obviously, the first couple innings are rough, but once Ortiz hits the home run, it's game on. Evan, the Red Sox did a couple of roster transactions today. Can you walk us through it?
Yeah, so they added infielder, outfielder, Yaro Munoz.
Munoz. Yeah.
It was Tanner broke that story last night, yesterday afternoon.
I had it 2 hours before anybody else had it.
Yes, he was officially added to the roster, and he was assigned to AAA Pawtucket. They also optioned pitchers Colton Brewer, Chris Mazza, Matt Hall, and Jeffrey Springs to the minor leagues.
Right, and there's no roster that they assigned him to. All those players were not assigned to any specific roster, which is kind of unique, but I think it speaks to sort of the situation that baseball is in. They don't know when they're going to start the 2020 season. Frankly, you may only have 1 or 2 minor league teams. They might not play the full system, so there's a lot of unknowns. So just seeing that they assigned them to literally just the minor leagues, I thought it was a telling sign.
Yeah, however, Jeffrey Springs was added to the Paw Sox roster. That was the only player that was assigned to a team.
Yeah, and I would also note that a bunch of players have been added to the roster in the past couple of days for the Paw Sox. Juan Centeno, Johnny Pareda, Ryder Jones, Cesar Puello, Stetson Ali were all added to the Paw Sox roster. Not announced by the Red Sox or anything like that, but their transactions did process. I would note, if you're looking at minor league rosters right now, a player like Rusney Castillo is listed on AA Portland's roster. There's something wrong with the way they map the back end. So you'll see a bunch of players listed as like November 19th, 2019 as a roster move, but those roster moves actually aren't real. They never processed. So there's something going on there. It was like when Sam Travis was listed on the Worcester Red Sox roster. He wasn't. There was no such thing as a Worcester Red Sox roster yet. Next year, different story. But Sam Travis isn't part of the organization. Munoz is an interesting character. 25 years old. It was released on March 7th by the St. Louis Cardinals. This story, Evan, is kind of bizarre, and it kind of questions like why they brought him in. I mean, so this is a player that was essentially, the extra infielder for St. Louis. Last year, he had 267, 172 at-bats. He had 2 home runs, 13 RBIs. And I guess there was a situation last year where he was kind of unhappy with his playing time with St. Louis. And this year was spring training. He had a pop, I guess, in his last spring training appearance. And he was actually supposed to go under a medical exam on it. And instead, he just left the team. He just got on a plane and flew back to the Dominican Republic and didn't tell anybody. And then the Cardinals ended up releasing him when they found out the guy literally just left. So I don't really know what to really make of that. I mean, this was a player that was vying for a 25-man roster spot for the Cardinals 26. And was 26. Sorry, they change things every year, but so this was a guy that was basically a shoo-in to potentially get 300-400 at bats for St. Louis. Not a starter, but certainly a player on the team.
Yeah, granted, maybe he saw personally that the injury was going to be a lot more severe than the Cardinals anticipated. So he was like, screw this. I'm going to go back to the Dominican Republic. But when I first read it, the first thing that came to my mind was, my God, this is a way George Costanza would leave one of his jobs. Literally just leaves. Doesn't quit, just leaves. So they basically had to fire him.
Yeah. It's weird. And you're right with the injury part. That's sort of an unknown. I think the one thing we don't really have right now is whether or not they can actually process a physical. I know the NFL, for example, isn't requiring physicals for the moment. They're trying to, medical resources should be used for COVID-19 and that only at this moment. So I don't know how that works, what physical condition he's in. But for the Red Sox, you get a 25-year-old that essentially is a Major League Baseball player. So there's some upside there, but I think from a character perspective, you kind of look at that and you're like, well, what if you don't get the playing time here? Because you're going to be in AAA Pawtucket, right? Or potentially in Major League Baseball, because we don't know what the roster is going to look like for 2020. I could see a 45-man active day roster. I really could, at least to start the season. So,
yeah, we don't know when the season's going to start. I think it's pretty clear that you're not going to see any sort of movement until mid-May at the earliest. For a while, I was thinking best case scenario, Memorial Day, a Memorial Day opening day, and I'm starting to get less optimistic about that. But yeah, if you're going into the season and after basically going through almost a short, modified off season right after starting spring training, you basically have to restart spring training again, and you can't do another full month's worth of spring training games.
That's my question, right? Is do you even need to do spring training? I understand that you need to get players to a certain level to compete. Is that 2 weeks and then your first spring training game? So whatever you would have your first spring training game, just have that be opening day, and just expand the rosters to make it work.
Longer this goes, I would say more likely you got to do a spring training. Personally, I think they'll probably do a 2-week spring training just to try to get the hitters back up to speed, because that's really all you need to worry about. Because once the hitters get back up to speed, they can get back up to speed, pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would just say the less you spend on getting back up and running, the better, I think, for baseball. I think they just need to get going. And I would tell them, you look at the players, and there's a lot of negotiations going on right now between Major League Baseball and the Players Association in terms of how many games are we actually going to get in? How is the proration of salaries going to work? How is the maturation of service time going to work? There's a bunch of different things that they're working out right now, and I think they're modeling out essentially every scenario, including cancellation of the entire season.
Yeah, you got to prepare for that. We just flat out just don't know what's going to happen. Now, saying that, China, who is now starting to get back things going again, and so they were close between close for basically 2 to 3 months. So that can give you a little bit of hope that maybe we can salvage some part of the season, but flat out we just don't know.
Yeah, and I would say it's up in the air. They could do regional games. I mean, really, I think it's a chance to be innovative if you're Major League Baseball, but I think if anything is an indicator, they're not a very innovative enterprise to begin with. I mean, this is an organization that still hasn't released the Boston Red Sox 2018 investigation. Rob Manfred went on ESPN essentially saying that, yes, it's done, but I just haven't finished it. Well, Rob, there's no games. Like, there's nothing going on.
Yeah,
it's not that hard. He just hasn't written it up yet, and that's sort of what he said in his ESPN interview was, yeah, the thing's done. We just haven't written it up yet, haven't had the time. It's like, okay, so when are you going to release it? And it could go either way. I think end up being like a slap on the wrist if you're the Red Sox, but Red Sox already had to fire Alex Cora, who's arguably was a top 5 manager in all baseball.
Absolutely.
So that's already sort of a punishment, right? The fact that you don't have core for a year or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, and the thing is, as an organization, you did have Apple Watch Gate under John Farrell, and that was basically just hey guys, just stop. So that could affect what's going to end up happening, but
yeah, but it's a different coaching staff.
True, but it's still for the
different GM too and everything.
For the organization though, still happened. And this happened in 2017, which was under Dave Dombrowski, but in 2018 was also under Dave Dombrowski. But granted, yes, there's a completely new thing in place now, but it's still an organizational thing. That's the only thing that I think could screw the Red Sox. But again, this has gone on way too long.
So I guess if you're baseball, right, and you don't know when your season's going to start, so the report should have come out already, in my opinion. You drop it right now, no one's going to really pay attention to it. Whatever the penalty is, it's what it is. But now you're in a situation where, okay, we release it a week before opening day. Why do you want to release it then, right? Why would you want to release it after a schedule comes out in terms for 2020? Wouldn't you want to release it now? So then everything after that, you release your schedule is then all good PR. Instead, you're going to drop a week before your season starts that, oh, hey, we're going to do this to the Red Sox. Like,
no kidding. Like, granted, when baseball does come back and you do have opening day, it's basically going to be like a stepping stone for really just like humankind to basically go forward to basically think, hey, we can actually start doing stuff now. So it's going to be such a big part of just how we're going to be, going forward. Why would you want to have this just linger over the heads? Like it hurts the Red Sox brand in so many ways. Just do it now and just get it over with. Like, this should have been released a month ago at the latest.
Well, yeah, and the reality is opening day was today, so it should have already been released, right? Yeah. The report's been done. A couple other Red Sox moves this past week. You had Travis Lakin's trade, which took place in January. It was a player to be named later. Ended up being Johnny Pareda. He was a catcher coming over from the Chicago Cubs. 23 years old. Played for Double-A Tennessee last year at 241, 2 home runs, 39 RBIs. Can actually play a multiple of positions. He can play first base, third base, and catcher. But he had a 996 fielding percentage last year and actually won the Gold Glove for the best catcher in the minor leagues. So that's a shockingly huge get for a position of need.
Yeah, and you gave up Travis Lakins. Now, granted, Lakins was projected to be, a pretty good pitcher at the Major League level. He didn't shine last year in Boston, but I mean,
yeah, but he wasn't also. Travis Lakins also wasn't that bad in Boston last year, and I think that's sort of like the unclearness of how they thought about him. He had a 3.86 ERA last year in 23 1/3 innings. That's not awful.
I didn't think it was that good.
He also had 3 spot starts in 16 games. He gave you 3 spot starts, 16 appearances, 3.86. That's not bad. And he had a positive WAR. I mean, I don't know. They must have saw something in him that just wasn't right. But
I didn't realize he was that good last year. Holy crap.
He ended up getting released by the Cubs and picked up by the Orioles, too.
He's with the Orioles now?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's a huge get for the Red Sox. I didn't realize it was that big of a get.
Yeah, they got a Gold Glove catcher.
Yeah, the Red Sox desperately do need catching depth too, because basically a couple of years ago you had to bring up Dan Butler as a.
I like Dan Butler. Stop.
I did. No, I did too. Don't get me wrong, but like, he shouldn't have had a shot at the major league level.
Yeah, I mean that's probably fair. Another big news that came out since our last show was Chris Sale going down with Tommy John. I mean, just weird. I mean, this offseason's just been absolutely insane if you're the Boston Red Sox. You had to fire your GM, right? Essentially, they fired Dave Dombrowski at the end of last year. They fired Alex Cora. They traded Mookie Betts, and then their marquee ace of the rotation pitcher goes down with Tommy John. That could have happened in October, the surgery. It is just so bizarre.
You knew back when Chris Sale was with a member of the White Sox that eventually he was going to need Tommy John. Just watching him pitch, you could tell, holy crap, this guy's going to need Tommy John eventually. When the previous year, he went down with an elbow issue, or was it a shoulder issue in 2018? Either way,
I'm looking it up. Yeah, in 2018, they called it mid-left shoulder inflammation. So that's, mid-left shoulder, like right here. But he's had elbow issues on the left elbow previous to this.
Okay. He needed it. It was clear that eventually he was going to need Tommy John. Last year when he went down, it should have been like, all right, let's clear this up. And then at the end of the regular season, they basically listened to Sale, or B, were like, you know what? This is going to get blown up this offseason. Let's try to give the fans Chris Sale for this year. And they didn't think long term. And now you lost Chris Sale for 2020, assuming 2020 happens, and you lost him possibly half of 2021. So instead of losing him for 1 year, you possibly lost him for basically 2 years, because after he comes back next year, he could be done. You don't know.
And you look at last year and you say 4.40 ERA, 147 in the third innings pitched, 25 starts. But you just look at that 4.4 ERA and you're like, that's not Chris Sale, right? Something's up there. And something was up before they officially put him on the IL. And there was just something off with Chris Sale for most of last year. I don't know. It could have happened a long time ago, but it seems like Chris Sale is going to do what he wants to do, and I feel like that's what he's been like his whole career. You had the scissor incident in the locker room in Chicago, and in this scenario, he went to the doctor, Andrews, that does all the Tommy Johns, and he wanted a second opinion. There was something weird going on, too, with Chris Sale.
Yeah, he basically tried to push it, saying, no, I don't want to get the surgery. And then eventually they're like, nah, you got to get the surgery. But if you're the Boston Red Sox, you're his employer, you need to, you'll listen to Dr. Andrews, who is, face it, like you said, he does the Tommy John for literally everyone. It should have been, the decision should have been made then to say, no, we're going to shut you down for 2020, get you right, and come back for 2021. But no, they had to listen to the employee. They shouldn't have done that. You invested $30 million into him. And we've known Chris Sale he's been with the organization for, this would have been 2017, 18, 19, 20. This would have been the fourth season. You know that he's going to make you think that he's 100% fine even when he's not. You had to.
And if you look at sort of like the month by month breakdown in terms of where did it go wrong with Chris Sale, he had a rough start in April, 4.67 ERA in 27 innings. But then in May, he went down to 2.82. And then in June, 2.73 in 33 innings pitched. Solid month of June. July spiked to the 5.86 ERA in 27 and 2/3 innings. And then sort of that was the whole downhill from there was in July. Because he went 2-0 in 5 starts in June. Had a solid June. And up to that point was relatively solid. And then 2nd July hit. Something happened, and rest of the year just
I think a lot of that. I think a lot of that to begin the year was just the ineffectiveness of Corey getting the starting pitching up and ready to begin the season. Because face it was like the first 3 times through the rotation that the rotation sucked.
And I remember Cora mentioning that too there was something last year where they just weren't acknowledging that the World Series run had taken a toll on their pitchers, but it clearly had, and then eventually they all settled down essentially as the season progressed. But
Yeah, Yeah, and then, I mean, the only person that really kind of went beginning to end, pitching well was Erod,
Yeah.
but yeah, like it was clear for Sale that something happened like in July.
Yep. And so on Trifecta Networksports.com, URL is in the ticker below. I've been doing a Paw Sox all-time series. This is the final season at McCoy, over 50 years at McCoy Stadium. The first season in AAA baseball at McCoy was 1973. So there's a lot of history that's come through the doors at McCoy Stadium. A lot of the early players actually played at McCoy when it was a AA team. And as I dug through the history, there's a lot of interesting players that have played for the Paw Sox and players that went on to have great careers with other organizations. So right now I am through the second base position, but I'm working on the first base position. So I'll just go through basically what I've picked so far, and Evan, stop me if any name sounds familiar or if you think I potentially picked the wrong player. My starting rotation: Dick Pull, Oil Can Boyd, Bronson Arroyo, Anthony Renato, Jeff Suppan, Brian Rose. I picked 6 pitchers for my starting rotation and then 7 relievers. Jeff Suppan, I mean, talk about a guy that got away, right?
I saw that, and then I tried to remember the name. Now, granted, I remember the name, but I immediately thought, "Holy crap, that is a name I haven't heard in a long, long time."
Yeah.
He pitched. Had 2 stints in Boston, and he was that journeyman that was around for 17 years, and
Yep.
he just. You think, holy crap, he was in Pawtucket at one point? What you
seven major league teams that he played for.
Yeah. Now later on when you go down the list, there's another name that I saw that you posted, and I was like, holy crap, I did not realize he played for the Paw Sox. Even though I'm actually, now that I think about it, when you go up one of the not the catwalks, but like the I don't know what you would call it, the thing that's on the outside of McCoy to go up and down. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Yeah, where they have all the pictures, like the murals of all the guys that have been there. I think his actual murals there, but I just never clicked. But I saw that name and I was like, wow, I did not realize he played for the Paw Sox.
Relievers, I picked 7 of them. I had Darryl Irvine, Trevor Kelly, Ryan Brazier, Travis Hughes, Fernando Cabrera, John LaRose, Corey Bailey. Out of this group, John LaRose was a guy that sort of popped out to me. He's a Cumberland High School graduate, born in Cumberland, Rhode Island. And if you just look at sort of like what he did for the Paw Sox, mind you, it wasn't anything spectacular, but this was a guy that was around Rhode Island for his entire playing career. And, for the Paw Sox, he had I'm trying to pull up the stats now, but 3.15 ERA and 343 innings pitched, which isn't bad. It's pretty respectable.
Pretty good.
Was a part of 1976 is when he made his Paw Sox debut, but he actually played in 1970 when it was a AA team. A lot of those early players played in Pawtucket when it was a AA team. Sort of just interesting to look at some of the stuff that he did and a bunch of those guys did. John LaRose had a 1.60 ERA and 73 innings pitched across 51 outings in 78. That was his best season in Pawtucket. But yeah, I think most recently, obviously Trevor Kelly and Ryan Brazier. I would say Brazier probably the most dominant reliever I've seen at McCoy in a while.
Yeah, like he was able to in 2018 when he came into the Red Sox organization. Manager Kevin Bowles basically said, yeah, he's the closer, which at the AAA level, or just really the minor league level in general, you don't usually give roles to guys in the bullpen. It's usually just look at the game scenario. And that basically just tells you how dominant he was in Pawtucket. And for a guy that was playing basically in minor league ball in Japan, like it was like, holy crap, where did this guy come from?
Yeah, he had 13 saves that year, which was the most since 2013 when Anthony Carter had 24. But you had Austin Maddox the year before of 6, Heath Hemry had 8, 2 years in a row. Tommy Lane had 11 in 2015. So, yeah, like Brian Brazier came in, and you knew his stuff would play in the late innings. He had that lively fastball that moved late, that late break on it, high velocity, could overpower hitters. And I don't want to take anything away from Trevor Kelly, who pitched last year and was phenomenal last year. but Kelly had that arm angle that aided him, where Ryan Brazier would just go at you, strike you out, and just overpower hitters. And guess what? He's a major league pitcher now. I mean,
Yeah,
it's crazy to think about, but I mean, no one had heard of Ryan Brazier in 2018, and then within a matter of months, I mean, this was a guy that the whole organization then lifted up and ended up pitching really well in the postseason too. A lot of great innings out of Ryan Brazier in that 18 World Series run.
yeah, and like I mean, last year he wasn't that granted he was sent back down to AAA Pawtucket. That was mainly because he wasn't pitching well because he was overused. That bullpen earlier in the season was just overworked, and he was pitching 4 or 5 days a week, and it wore on him pretty quickly.
But I do love. So he got a breather. Essentially, they gave him like a little breather to come down. But if you look at what he did with the Paw Sox last year too, he had a .96 ERA in 9 1/3 innings pitched over 10 outings. He gave up 1 earned run on 6 hits. Like he
was
came
like
down.
His first appearance too.
Yeah, and he just came down. I remember Brazier came down and just demolished these AAA hitters, and it was embarrassing. It was you were watching and you were like, "What is he doing here?" Really?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. Moving on to catchers, I had Ryan Lavarnway and Gary Allenson. Lavarnway was an interesting guy. He just never panned out. Third base, Wade Boggs. I mean, in my head, I was like, can I pick anyone else other than Wade Boggs and not get absolutely destroyed? There's been a lot of players that came through McCoy but didn't play enough, so I set a minimum of appearances, at bats, whatever you want to call it. So there's thresholds. So a guy like Nomar or Bogarts or Roger Clemens, they just didn't meet the threshold. But Boggs actually played long enough there where, he was great. He was part of the longest game in baseball history. I mean, Wade Boggs is a phenomenal player.
Right.
Played for the Yankees too, but I don't think Red Sox fans like to bring that up.
Yeah, and I mean, you really can't even put Rafael Devers in there, even though he hit, I think it was like 412 with the Paw Sox.
No.
So he was there for 6 days.
I had 300 at-bats minimum, and Boggs hit it. And guess what? He's also a Hall of Famer. Won the batting title 5 times, 2-time Gold Glove winner, 8-time Silver Slugger, World Series winner.
Come on, Tanner, you can't put in Jansen Whitty in there?
There's a utility spot that I haven't selected yet. And you might see guys like Mike Miller, Jansen Whitty vying for a spot, but there's some other guys that I stubbed, like Darryl Snyder. I didn't even think of him. Third base / first baseman. He had 37 home runs 1 year. It was a franchise record, I want to say, and 104 RBIs.
2013.
It's just off the chart. He had 104 RBIs, which is the most in franchise history in 2004, and he had 36 home runs.
What was the name again?
So, Darryl Snyder. Not Earl Snyder, sorry. Oh, God. So I subbed him. He might get the utility spot, but 104 RBIs. Hit 273, but that's impressive. Jordy Reed was my shortstop. Marty Barrett, my second baseman. But you had mentioned something, Evan, that I had written. It was David Eckstein, and I did want to talk about this.
Yeah, that was the guy that I was referring to earlier.
Yeah, so Eckstein was a guy that the Red Sox essentially gave up on. They just gave up on the guy. Never played for Boston, actually. As far as got up was AAA. Was picked up by the Angels. This guy went on to be a 2-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion, was a World Series MVP. He was a 19th round pick in 1997 for the Red Sox. He had 246 for the Paw Sox. He had 4 errors at second base. Most people know him as a shortstop, I believe, but played second base in Pawtucket. 4 errors is the fewest in franchise history. He also had the highest fielding percentage in franchise history for a second baseman, 992 that year. But this guy's gone on to have 5,000 big league at-bats. He's a 280 hitter, 20.9 career WAR. And he never played for the Red Sox. They just gave up on him.
Why would you give up on a guy that can play defense that well?
So he's a smaller-bodied player. So, a player that size wasn't regarded very well back then. Now you have guys like Jose Altuve, Dustin Pedroia. So, David Eckstein was essentially those guys. He was Jose Altuve or Dustin Pedroia before they even existed. So they gave up on this guy who was exceptional defender and 280 hitter at the major league level.
Yeah, he was only 5'6".
That's pretty incredible. You know, I don't think he ever actually won a Gold Glove at the major league level, but defensively he was a very good player. It just sort of shows like there's some really talented players that just never end up playing for the team, even though they have them on the roster.
Yeah, if it's funny if you go through the Red Sox draft, the Red Sox draft results going back let's start
Anthony Rizzo.
2 years ago. Start 2 years ago and then just work your way back. It's amazing some of these names that you come across. You're like, holy crap! I did not realize the Red Sox had him.
Yeah, they had John Lester too, but they let him go. So, yeah, another one though I came across. So my first baseman comes out tomorrow. TrifectaNetworkSports.com. I picked my first baseman. Spoiler alert: it's Jeff Bailey. I was a big fan of Bailey growing up, going to McCoy. He always seemed to get the big hit, so you'll see that in detail tomorrow. But I want to talk about Cecil Cooper. This is another player that played for the Red Sox, actually at the major league level, but they traded him to the Milwaukee Brewers, and I think most people know him as a Milwaukee Brewer. So while he's a great player, played 17 big league seasons, 2-time Gold Glove, 3-time Silver Slugger, how the trade and the player movement that got him to Milwaukee is bizarre. So they traded him in December of '76 to the Brewers for Bernie Carbo and George Scott. Scott was actually started his career in Boston, was traded to Milwaukee in 1971. In that package, Tommy Harper, who's been around the Paw Sox for years, I think he's like some type of assistant in terms of player analysis right now in the organization. So Harper came in 1971 in that deal. And then Carbo was traded to Boston in 1973 from St. Louis. And then, oddly enough, he was traded to the Brewers in June of 1976. And then the Brewers traded him back in December. So he went from St. Louis to Boston in 73. June of 76, Boston sends him to Milwaukee. And then in December of that year, the Red Sox trade for him back. Like, what? What
Bernie Bernie Carbo is just a very funny name that always comes up. Like, going back to the 75 series, people don't realize the Red Sox were down by 3 in the 8th inning, and he had a 3-run shot. And you never hear about that shot hit by that shot by Fist to win Game 6. That never happens without Bernie Carbo.
But it's just like you go back and you just go through the history of the team and some of the players. And even Jeff Bailey's an interesting guy who I ended up picking for my all-time first baseman for the Paw Sox. So this was a guy that won the league MVP in 2008. But he actually played in Portland with the Sea Dogs before they were with the Red Sox organization. They were with the Marlins. So he was actually teammates in 2001 with Josh Beckett when he was with Portland. And then in 2008, 2009, Bailey was actually played some time in Boston, and he was teammates with Beckett on the major league roster with the Red Sox. So it's sort of interesting. And you see that going through the years. You see players that played for Portland when it was a different team, and then they came back. And the same thing with some of the guys that played. I think Cecil Cooper played for Louisville when it was the Red Sox affiliate, and then came over to Pawtucket the next year. So it's sort of interesting going back to the history.
It's when you get caught in some of those baseball reference, wormholes. Like, it's interesting to see some of that stuff that you come up. And getting back to Jeff Bailey, I remember I actually saw him hit a home run at Fenway off of Francisco Liriano. Back when he was with the Twins.
6 career home runs, I think Bailey did.
Yeah, 6. He, I saw him hit one off of, hit a home run off of Francisco Liriano back when Liriano was thought to be like the next Johan Santana with the Twins. He ended up being just, he wasn't that bad, but he wasn't Johan Santana.
No, Johan Santana, underrated player though. I feel like people forget how dominant he was for a while there. I'm going to pull him up too. He had a 3.20 ERA in his career.
That's fantastic.
With Minnesota though, 3.22, and then with the Mets, 3.18. So he got better. 2010, Did he have Tommy John at some point, 2011? But just, yeah, all-time great player. 2-time Cy Young winner, Yohan Santana. Won the Triple Crown. 4-time All-Star, 3-time ERA title, Gold Glove winner. I mean, just all around, like, Hall of Famer? Like, no? Yeah, not a Hall of Famer? Like, do you not think he's a Hall of Famer?
He should be definitely in the running, but I don't think he's on the ballot anymore.
No, he's not. No, he's not a Hall of Famer, but, you know, I guess if you look at players that were around him, Baseball Reference has him like as a fringe candidate. Like David Price is a similar player, but Yohan Santana, I mean, a 2-time Cy Young winner, and he's not a Hall of Famer. That's hard to believe.
Yeah, he won
12-year career.
Yeah. Oh my God, I'm looking at his stats right now. Yeah, wow, he was really, really good from 2004 to 2006. Like,
retired kind of young, 33 years old. Maybe if he played a couple more years, he'd be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he was out in 2011.
He's on some bad teams though.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, he went to the Mets, and you're supposed to be, you know, the guy to the guy to get people excited with the new stadium, and
he actually got better with the Mets though, statistically.
Yeah, that's true.
Statistically,
he also has the only no-hitter in Mets history, right?
Sounds right. I think I remember him having one.
Yeah, he did have one with the Mets, and I think it was the only one in their history.
I don't know. Hall of Famer.
Yeah, that's getting a rabbit hole, but yeah.
Maybe he could be at the Paw Sox Hall of Fame. Paw Sox didn't win the Hall of Fame. I mean, no, seriously though. Like, I'm going through this Paw Sox all-time roster thing, and every player I've selected is not in their Hall of Fame, which is actually like, that's kind of bad in a sense. Where like, if you look at so Wade Boggs is the only guy that I've picked that's in the Paw Sox Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
Wade Boggs.
Yeah, but the thing is, yeah, but like even like a guy like Roger Clemens even said in his when he was at McCoy last year for his induction ceremony, he was like, granted, I wasn't here long.
Well, he was here for like grabbing a cup of coffee and then left.
Yeah,
he was there for a haircut. Like,
yeah, pretty much. They basically only brought him in. Paw Sox basically brought him there because, you know, kind of felt like it's
like Carlton Fisk is in the Paw Sox Hall of Fame. And Carlton Fisk never played one game for the Paw Sox. Like, not one. 0. He played in AAA in 1971, 23 years old, but it was Louisville. And technically, it is different. Like, that history is not part... Like, so they moved to Worcester. Technically, like, it's still the same, but when you change affiliations and things like that, like, Louisville was a different team. They're different ownership. Like, that team still exists. Now it's the Cincinnati Reds.
Right.
So, like, the Paw Sox moved to Worcester, that history transfers, but say if Pawtucket stayed and their affiliation went to a different team, and then it went to, like, it's weird how that works, but, like, Carlton Fisk is not a Paw Sox Hall of Famer, but he is, like, technically. I don't know. It's just, like, it's some of the weird things, like, I'm picking the true Paw Sox Hall of Famers. Like, if people want to know who the real Hall of Famers are, go to the website, TrifectaNetworkSports.com. Those are the players that actually deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. But these players, they're not going to get people in the seats, unfortunately. A lot of them. Wade Boggs did, but, you know.
Right.
I digress. You know, one guy I haven't really thought about for first base, it might be an oversight, is probably Mo Vaughn, but I don't know. Yeah. That's one I'm not going to vote Mo Vaughn, but Mo Vaughn will be a mention, I think. I got to mention Mo Vaughn. He's actually a Paw Sox Hall of Famer. He got fatter since he retired, so how could that guy get bigger? But
yeah, when he was there a couple of years ago when he was inducted, like he was a big dude.
Yeah, 2017 he was inducted into the Paw Sox Hall of Fame.
Yeah, when him and Joe Morgan inducted at the same time, and listening when they had the press conference of both of them, I learned more in that 15 minutes about baseball than I did in the previous 2 years.
Yeah, and there'll be I'll do like a manager thing too at the end, and yeah, Morgan's the only manager to ever be inducted in the Paw Sox Hall of Fame officially. Sorry, Billy McMillan probably can't put you as the all-time Paw Sox manager yet, but I don't know. I think Ballsy will get some consideration from me though. I like the
Yeah,
way Ballsy operates his team.
yeah, him, Arnie Baylor. I can't think of the guy's name. He was, I don't know if he still is, but he was the manager of the Norfolk Tides for a long time after.
They've had a lot of really
Ron
good managers
Johnson.
come through. Yep, Ron Johnson, Torey Lovello was a manager at one point. There's a lot of great managers that came through Pawtucket at some point. Joe Morgan's probably the most famous of them all. So we're going to move on here from Red Sox talk and move into Patriots talk. This is literally the only thing that's really happening right now in sports, which is kind of sad, but it speaks to like sort of the situation we're all in. So Stephen Gostkowski was released from the New England Patriots, spent most of last year on the IR. 14-year career with the Patriots, 87.4% field goal, 98.3% of his extra points were good. All-time leading point scorer in Patriots history. I believe he's also the all-time NFL kicker in terms of points as well.
I don't think it's
Highest field goal percentage in NFL history amongst kickers. And this is the guy that came in for Adam Vinatieri, who was a Hall of Fame kicker, and Stephen Gostkowski put in a Hall of Fame career right after Vinatieri. Like, absolutely insane.
Yeah, you got to think about during this entire run for the Patriots, they've never really had to worry about worry about who's kicking the football. It's been Adam Vinatieri, and then went to Stephen Gostkowski. And even when Gostkowski was in there, like even his rookie year, they really didn't worry about him. Granted, say what you want, what happened in the first Super Bowl loss to the Giants, where Belichick didn't put him out there for a 51-yard field goal, but
well, in the postseason, so in his he was part of 3 Super Bowl teams. In the postseason, he was 88 of 92 on extra points, 39 of 44 on field goals, and 28 postseason games. That's not bad. And
no, it's not.
In 2018, he was 10 for 10 on extra points in the Super Bowl winning run and 5 for 6 on field goals. I do wonder if something from an injury perspective where he's just never going to be right. Because you saw that statement from Bill Belichick, and that was a lengthy statement, and Belichick typically doesn't do that. I know he was there for 14 years, but typically you don't see Belichick do that unless the player's retiring or they're Tom Brady. So I almost think that maybe this is it for Gostkowski. They had signed him to a 2-year, $8.5 million deal, which was the 3rd highest in the NFL for a place kicker. It's a lot of money to give a kicker.
Right.
And they were criticized for that too. And obviously you can't plan for the injury, and this is a cap move for them, but who's going to be their kicker? I mean, you wonder who's going to be their quarterback, but I would say the kicker position is probably more important at the moment. And I know that sounds really weird to say, but you figure they're going to stall out quite a bit on offense. They're going to need someone to kick the ball.
Right. You would assume that they would probably bring in, say, Nick Folk again for next year, and then probably go to the draft to see if they can bring in a guy late in the draft. That's the presumption that you would be gonna go with, but I mean, it's the Patriots. You don't know what's gonna happen. It's simple as that. You think they're gonna go left, they go right.
Yeah, and Folk last year played in 7 games. He was 12 for 12 on extra points and 82.4% on 17 field goal attempts. Yeah, they probably draft someone, I'd imagine. I guess I trust Belichick to draft someone here because he did draft a Hall of Famer and Stephen Gostkowski. So,
yeah, and I mean, even with the punters, the Patriots have always had a really good punter.
Yeah, that too. And Jake Bailey was a great punter for them. Great pick.
Yeah, and before that, you had Ryan Allen, and face it, Ryan Allen was one of the best punters that we've had in a long, long time.
And you look at Ryan Allen too, and they cut him. They drafted Jake Bailey, and you're like, wait, you have Ryan Allen, who's probably one of the best punters in the NFL. And then, cut him, and then Jake Bailey ended up being a very effective punter too. Maybe Bailey will do the field goals. I don't know about that. But so I guess what this leads to in this conversation is the leadership void now in the locker room for the Patriots. Tom Brady's gone. Stephen Gostkowski's gone. Brady was there for 20 years. Stephen Gostkowski was there for 14 years. You still have some leadership. Devin McCourty's still there. He ended up signing a new deal. 2 years, $23 million, $17 million guaranteed on the player that is a good safety. Don't get me wrong. I like McCourty, but Like, how old can you get as a team?
I literally think the only reason why they brought him in is because Belichick knew that he wasn't going to be Brady wasn't going to be coming back, so they thought,
Sure.
let's bring back McCourty to try to help out the locker room. It was the same thing with Slater. I think they brought him back in to basically help out the locker room. I think
That's
that
a
was
lot of
literally
money.
the only
That's a
reason
lot
to
of
bring
money to help out the locker room.
Oh, you're absolutely right, but I mean, if you have a bad locker room, can make a team go south real quick.
And Kyle Van Noy is gone too, another key cog too, and Jamie Collins is gone, and they brought back Shalik Calhoun. Ooh, like okay, like there's a linebacker, I guess, but you replace Van Noy and Jamie Collins with Calhoun, like and this team was right up against it from a cap situation, cap space. They had $13 million in dead money for Tom Brady. You just look at how they handled it, and last year they didn't have an offense that could compete, but I think they tried to load up last year too. On the flip side of that,
they did. You had Gordon. Granted, that was eventually that what ended up happening. You knew was eventually going to happen. And then he brought in Antonio Brown. He gave him a ton of money, and then they just cut him because there was just so many off the field issues that they were sick and tired of dealing with because he just basically just couldn't shut up. But if you had those two guys and they were at their best, like this offense would have looked a hell of a lot better at the end of last year.
Yeah, I think Josh Gordon, we knew the other shoe was going to drop at some point, ended up dropping on him.
I think it was like week 16, right?
Yeah, and they drafted N'Keal Harry. They used a first round pick on Harry. They drafted Damian Harris. They had Sony Michel returning. They still had James White. They had Ben Watson and was it Lance Kendricks too. They had some other options at tight end. They tried out, it just didn't work. They signed Antonio Brown. That didn't work out. They were sort of forced to release Antonio Brown for a variety of reasons, a lot of pressure to do so. And it was really weird too. And they had I can't think of Demaryius Thomas at some point too. And that was another guy they tried out.
Another name, yes, that he looked real good in the preseason, and then they released him even though he looked fantastic.
And then they traded for Mohamed Sanu with a second round pick. So they definitely tried to invest in that offense. They used actually a lot of assets to try to improve that offense. And it actually hurt them for the long term, and it just never worked out. And, I guess I would say to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, watch out for Tom Brady, just in the sense that New England tried so much and it just didn't work. Like, right. They invested more in this offense than a lot of teams do in any given year.
Yeah, now granted, what was it? Like, Sanu's second game, he broke his ankle.
Yeah,
Julian Edelman, he had the second half of last year, he was right. And basically, you're throwing a Landon Roberts out there as basically a fullback.
Yeah, as they have a fullback now, so
yeah, you were throwing him out there catching touchdown passes come on, you're not going to be able to go far. Basically, the only weapon that you really had was you had N'Keal Harry, who was still trying to get up to speed with Tom Brady, and then basically James White, which was really the most reliable guy you had on offense.
Yep. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this NFL season and how potentially that season's delayed or training is delayed, and some of the subsequent stuff that might occur here where players can't really get into camp and mini camps and the draft and how that plays into things, and a lot of unknowns coming into this upcoming season. And I think for the Patriots, it's actually not a bad thing to have this many unknowns. And for once, I think they are not the favorite, which is a nice thing. I think they're not the favorite even in the AFC East, I would say. That target's not going to be on their back, so maybe that takes the pressure off and lets them do some stuff that they normally wouldn't do. But then again, when does Belichick cave into pressure? I don't think he does. Yeah. So you have three quarterbacks on your roster: Brian Hoyer, Jarrett Stidham, Cody Kessler. Brian Hoyer, his agent, I believe, told Ian Rappaport or was Adam Schefter, one of those guys, that if a team had offered Hoyer $5 million, he would still come back to New England because the Patriots had offered him a chance to go for the starting job. So to me, that's all right, we're going to see a real QB competition here between Hoyer and Stidham, and they're not going to go out and get somebody else.
No,
I can't afford to, really, but.
Yeah, I mean, the only person, Kessler could end up leaving, but apparently he was really, really, vital in practice last year. But I don't think they're going to sign someone like they're not going to go up to Cam Newton and Andy Dalton. I think the only person I somewhat see them going after is somebody in the draft. But
Correct.
yeah, this is going to really be the first time in 25 years where you're watching the preseason games to see who's going to be the QB of this team.
Yeah, and you know what? I watched a lot of preseason last year to get a real look at Jarrett Stidham. I was impressed with him. Obviously, in the regular season, his limited action turned out to be really, really bad. But I'm not going to hold that against him. Brian Hoyer, in pieces of his career, has been a very effective NFL player. There's always been something that happens, whether it be an injury that derails him or something else. But there was a period of time there between Cleveland and Houston where Hoyer was an NFL starting quarterback, and he played well enough to be an NFL starting quarterback. So I think Hoyer knows the offense. He can come in day one. And I think the benefit is, how often are you walking into a season losing your franchise quarterback and you're going into camp with 3 quarterbacks that know your offense?
Yeah, that doesn't happen. And worst case scenario, you're bringing also now in Brian Hoyer to work with Jarrett Stidham to get him ready.
Yep. Yeah, that's true too. I don't know how helpful Tom Brady was with Jarrett Stidham. I doubt he was very helpful.
Fair. But I mean, even going back to what you said, Stidham looked impressive last year during the preseason. The poise that he was poise that he had in the pocket and be able to wait for the throws and be able to have that pocket presence to not be able to take the sack was impressive.
Yeah, 100%. So we will keep track of that. Certainly, what's going on with the New England Patriots. You can get the latest on TrifectaNetworkSports.com. Where we're sort of going to finish. I mean, we're not finishing here. There's a couple more topics, but I want to talk about sort of the poor response that we're seeing from professional sports teams.
Seems so bad
in terms of COVID-19 response. I have never seen teams just a lack of awareness or caring about bad PR than what we've seen now. We saw the 76ers and the Devils ownership. They were lowering salaries of their employees, and then they were bashed enough on social media where they then were like, you know what, we give up, we're pulling back those plans. And then a day later, you have the Boston Bruins laying off workers and then lowering some workers' pay. And they were the last NHL team to offer any type of aid to their arena workers or any workers, right? And then they're one of the first to start doing layoffs. And then this also came a day after they had told their arena workers that they were going to lay them off as well. And this is the Delaware North Group and Charlie Jacobs. Jacobs is worth over $3 billion. The Bruins are worth over $1 billion. They're the 5th most valued NHL franchise, and last year they cleared $62 million in revenue.
I believe, what wasn't it, like 2 weeks ago, the Celtics came out and said that they were going to pay their game day employees through the regular season. However,
they actually cut the check too. I think the Celtics actually cut the check. Like they did it pre. They pre-checked it.
Right. And with the and now, however, like you said, the Delaware North Group does own TD Garden, which is owned by the Bruins. So therefore, it was the Bruins' responsibility to pay the arena workers, which they are basically saying they will pay them if the 6 remaining regular season games that were scheduled for TD Garden were not played. However, as of right now, technically they still need to be played. So they actually, if it's my understanding, they actually technically still haven't been paid, and yet they're still an employee. Am I right about that?
Yeah. So the Bruins put together a fund for their for the workers, right? They put together a fund. I think it was like $1.25 million, or it was around that range. But in essence, it was only going to cut a check if the final 6 games of the season were canceled. Right. So in essence, this may be months from now where the NHL decides to cancel the season. So these people are sitting around waiting for the check from the Bruins that they're never going to get, or if they do get it, it's in 6 months. So not only were they the last NHL team to offer any kind of aid, they then gave aid in a way where these people would not see any type of money for months on end. And then they decided to lay off and cut the wages of their workers. And that's the Boston Bruins. That is Charlie Jacobs, who's worth over $3 billion. And I just want to give a shout out to Drew Brees and his family. Drew Brees announced today that him and his wife are contributing $5 million to the state of Louisiana in 2020. $5 million. And that is, yes, he's an NFL quarterback. Yes, he makes over $20 million a year. But you're talking about Drew Brees, and his net worth is $120 million, give or take.
Yeah, that's a big chunk of change.
Charlie Jacobs is worth over $3 billion. So Drew Brees did the right thing, and I would like to see, and I bet, honestly, if the Celtics were asked, hey, you know what, can you cover the arena workers? I bet they would do it, and it's not even their responsibility.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Per usual, it's been the NBA that is leading the charge with everything. Like, it was announced, I think it was like an hour and a half ago, that the NBA's like top executives are taking massive pay cuts to be able to take care of the lower level employees. Per usual, it's the NBA that's basically leading the charge.
And the NHL league office took 20% pay cuts across the board to try to avoid doing potential layoffs. Look, I understand the economics of it. The NHL season might be over, and the lost revenue of that is substantial, both from a playoff perspective, but it's also negotiating their next TV deal. This actually goes for MLS too. And NHL and MLS are the two big leagues that have their rights coming up in the subsequent years. So how does this affect that? Is it a $50 million hit, $100 million hit? You disperse that in terms of the rev share and the impact that has. So yes, there's an economic impact, but I would say if you're Charlie Jacobs and you're worth $3 billion, there's a way to set up a line of credit if you don't have the cash on hand. There's other things you can do when you have that much money to manipulate and move it around to create cash available to the players and the employees.
Right, and when this all first started, there was a GoFundMe that was actually I can't remember who was started by. I think it was by Marshawn's wife to basically help raise money for these employees. It got up to like $50,000, and a bunch of players in the Bruins were just donating like $1,000 here, $1,000 there. To basically help them out, and they had to do something before the Bruins, and then the Bruins were the last team to come out and say they were going to finally do it, and they basically wanted a pat on the back for it, and it just looked just a bad look.
Yeah, and I've seen more players step up during this time than owners, and that's a shame. But I think a lot of times you see fans side with the ownership, with the teams rather than the players, and I think you should look at it very seriously and candidly and say, you know what, we need to support the players a little bit more than maybe the team. And actually, I just got a press release in from the NFL. NFL family makes initial donation of more than $35 million to provide relief for those impacted by COVID-19. That is the NFL Player Association, clubs, owners, and players. More than $35 million, $3.5 million coming out of the NFL Foundation. So that just came into my inbox. Good for them. Good for the NFL. The NFL seems to be doing the right thing, and they're probably the least affected league out of anybody. But I get it from the NHL. The NHL is still a league that, yes, it's established, but the NHL should be way bigger than it is in terms of how long it's been around. And it's not, right? It's still the third league in the country. So the NBA is just blown by it like crazy. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. Not to scare you, but I got to move my laptop. There's no plug out here, so my laptop's about to die. So I'm actually going to be moving this to. So
I'll just talk.
So I can plug it in.
I'll just talk, and then we'll just continue this because Evan's being very unprofessional right now. I'm just kidding. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah, my laptop battery sucks.
So the Bruins have been poor on the COVID-19 response, and there's been a lot of franchises. I know the Carolina Hurricanes have been really bad as well. In MLS, Minnesota United also did something that's really bad. The Boston Red Sox also, in my opinion, haven't done exactly what they should be doing, considering what they are. I think this is a chance to really take charge and be a leader. And the players shouldn't be the ones stepping up. It's great to see it, and they have the means to, which is great. But I think owners need to take a little bit more of an onus here, especially helping out the community that literally supports them. 162 game season at Fenway Park, 90 game season, right, or whatever it is. But you just think about this is the areas, the teams like the Bruins play in TD Garden, and they play in a market that supports them, and they have top 3, top 5 attendance in the NHL, and they're a profitable organization. So I think you have to take care of the people that take care of you during these times, and the fact that we're 2 weeks after this season was suspended and they're having a cash flow problem. What's been their expenditures in the last 2 weeks?
Nothing. Payroll.
Maybe throwing away some food, and which they should have donated, and I don't know, keeping the lights on at the Garden, keeping it clean, keeping the water running. I don't know how they could already be in a cash crunch. And for them, it was only 6 home games that were canceled.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're already laying off full-time employees of the team. Yeah. This isn't arena workers. These are people that work for the team all year round.
Yeah. So it's absolutely terrible.
What?
It's absolutely terrible. And going back to the arena employees, the Bruins were geared for a long Stanley Cup playoff run too. So there wasn't going to be 6 more home games. There was probably going to be a lot more than that.
Yeah, so why wouldn't the Bruins release President's Cup shirts and just sell that, and they'll probably cover the cost of the wages?
Yeah, no kidding. And even you can even do Stanley Cup. You can even do Stanley Cup champion T-shirts right now. Because I could be wrong about this, but by NHL rules, technically aren't the Bruins the Stanley Cup champions if they don't play the playoffs?
Technically, yeah. So the Bruins could have capitalized on the situation. They were going to win the President's Cup, and probably going to be the Stanley Cup champions just by default. So look, there was ways for them to raise capital and not do what they did, but they took the easy way out. That frankly, that's the easy way out. Not come up with a way to find capital to pay their employees. That was the easy way out for the Boston Bruins. And I haven't watched them in a long time, to be honest with you. I would actually encourage people not to watch the Boston Bruins until they sell the team.
This year, after last year, I made it a point to try to watch as much Bruins hockey as possible. Now, granted, in the past, if there's a Bruins game on, going back to when they had those back-to-back collapses, at the end of March and April to miss the playoffs. After that, I really stopped watching them. But after the run last year, it kind of brought me back into it. So this year, I was on team. There's nothing on. Instead of watching Netflix, watch the Bruins. Now I'm not even going to watch them. The way they've absolutely handled this has been borderline just inept.
Yeah, no, it's been bad. Very bad look for sure. I guess this sort of brings us to the close. We have one more thing I want to get to here. But I guess talking about the Bruins and the reality of the NHL season is probably over, and the uncertainty of when Major League Baseball is going to return. There really isn't much going on for sports, and I think that's been hard on people more than just being if you're at home and you can turn on the TV and watch a live sporting event, that's not bad. But just being at home, and now we're at the point where opening day was today. This day is a holiday for a lot of sports fans, so it's certainly a tough day for sure, I think.
Yeah, even personally, I made hot dogs for lunch just to try to feel in the baseball mood.
Yeah, and you can turn on Nesson right now. You can watch the Game 2 of the ALCS, 2013 ALCS. So I think during this time, it's important to, to buy local. Small businesses are obviously getting, hit pretty hard right now. So I'm a beer fan. I hadn't drinking beer for basically 3 months to start the year, New Year's resolution. But last week, I basically broke that. So I bought a bunch of local beer, and I have a bunch of favorites from Rhode Island. And I think it's so important to show support, especially the local distilleries that are actually making hand sanitizer right now, being innovative and doing that. So this is local beer that you can buy in Rhode Island. Here's my top 5 Rhode Island beers. The Rise APA, that's from Whalers. Road Trip IPA, that's from Newport Storm. Captain's Daughter, that's from Gray Sail. Fresh Catch, which is Narragansett. There's actually a bunch of Narragansett beers that are really good. The Del Shandy's are good. The Autocrat's pretty good. When they did the Alley's Donuts, that was pretty good. And honestly, the Narragansett Lager is one of the better lagers you can buy. That's cheap.
Yeah, for cheap beers, Narragansett's actually a pretty good beer.
But if you're looking for just a plain Rhode Island lager, like a decent lager, a foolproof mix Ocean State lager, which is probably one of my favorite local lagers. And that's it. Those are my five: Rise APA, Road Trip IPA, Captain's Daughter, Fresh Catch, and then you have the Ocean State Lager. There's a lot of other beers in the state. I think we're fortunate in New England to have some of the best craft beers in the country. And I think within basically where we live, Evan, you can go 20 minutes and get to 5 or 6 different breweries, which is fortunate.
Yeah. There's a Northern Rhode Island Brewers Association, and not Northern, but like Rhode Island Brewers Association, where if you go to a bunch of different breweries, you can start to get like free stuff. And it's I think there's like 20, 25 breweries on there for a state as small as Rhode Island. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, getting to mine, my top 5 are Road Haze from Ravenous. Then you have obviously the Rise from Whalers. Like, you gotta love that.
It's so good.
I believe it was you that told me that there's actually more Rise taps in Rhode Island than Bud Light.
Yeah, but to be fair, I think most places have Bud Light, but it's like on can or bottle. But yeah, from a draft perspective.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy.
You can go to a Chili's and get Rise on draft in Rhode Island.
Right. There's not many people are going to know about this, but there's the Neapolitan from Crooked Current Brewery. Neapolitan ice cream?
Yes.
It basically is like a mixture of that in a beer. It's one of the weirdest beers I've ever had, but it's still really good. I don't think they have it right now, but then there's also the peanut butter stout that was around Christmas time at the Guild. Really, like, any beers from the Guild are going to be really good, but that one is just absolutely fantastic.
They had a Russian Imperial Stout that's probably my favorite Guild beer that they've ever had. I didn't include the Guild because the beer that I picked, like the Guild, you can't really buy the beers elsewhere. Like, everything I named, you can literally go on, go to your local liquor store in Rhode Island, and you can get it. The Guild's a little bit tougher. I love the Guild though. Yeah, Guild's actually owned by Narragansett, if people aren't aware.
Yeah. And then my last one is the Frozen Cup Raspberry Strawberry Pineapple from Long Live Beer Works in Providence. It's a sour, but I really honestly wouldn't even call it a beer. It's almost like it's kind of like a smoothie. It's one of the weirdest things you've ever had, but that's one that I actually kind of forgot about literally until about like right when we started talking about it. But like that, yeah, that's another really good beer.
And you can tell basically by my list and your list that completely different tastes when it comes to beers. Like, my list is basically all IPAs, APAs. The Captain's Daughter from Gray Sail is a double IPA. Like, yeah, your style is a little bit more fruity there, Evan.
Yeah, I mean, you got the peanut butter. I mean, I do have
peanut butter stout's awesome though.
I do have two stouts on there. I got the peanut butter stout, and then I got the Neapolitan, and then I got the sour, which is just honestly the only reason I put it on there was just because it's just such a weird beer. Obviously, we both had Rise, but then I have Road Haze from Ravenous, which is in Cumberland, which is an IPA.
Yeah, so I think just during this time, it's important to shop local whenever possible. I know it's difficult. Like, if I wanted to buy this microphone, which I've had for a while, local, I can't buy it. Like, it's tough to buy. So, like, when it comes to beer, when it comes to restaurants, when it comes to even clothing, there's options to buy local. And I think that's important as businesses close down. The bigger retailers can afford to take the hit, or at least manipulate it a little bit to take the hit. But your small businesses are getting killed right now. So it's important to try to shop local. And we'll be trying to do some stuff in the coming weeks to support local businesses on TrifectaNetworkSports.com, whether it be through advertising or something like that. But yeah, I think it's important that we all support one another during this time and be upbeat and be positive and take it seriously.
Yeah, basically right now, if you're going to get a pizza, don't get it from Domino's, get it from a local pizza place.
Yeah, although Cumberland House of Pizza Chops is closed, and that's the number one pizza joint in Cumberland.
Are they fully closed?
Yeah, I believe they're fully closed. You can check their Facebook page, Chops on Facebook, to make sure. But I believe they are fully closed for the moment. One of my favorite local places is Saki's. They deliver. Delivery, curbside pickup is number one thing to do. A lot of businesses are being innovative, though, during this time, which is great. 20% building capacity is now in effect, I believe. So if you go to the supermarket, they can only fit 20% of their capacity in the store at any given time, which is challenging if you're a retailer that, say, has 50 employees that are active at any given shift. And yeah, so I don't know how they're going to execute that kind of stuff, but just important to, stay on top of things. And I think sports is still a good escape. So, head to TrifectaNetworkSports.com. The Paw Sox all-time roster series will continue probably through next week. And then we'll do some other cool stuff. I'll look at the top 5 all-time moments in McCoy Stadium history and maybe start taking some roster speculation and that kind of stuff. And at some point, I'm going to run out of ideas.
Yeah, you know what? The way it's going to be working is every week you're going to get closer and closer to realizing how this is going to end up playing out. So I want to call that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I have enough ideas to, I think, cover the site for a while, and there's always some information that leaks out, and maybe I'll do a what if, what if Cruzne Castillo was at the major league level, and what if they kept Travis Shaw, or what if they didn't make this trade. And I think there's a lot of stuff you can do that way and just be creative. I know a lot of local reporters that typically cover sports are now covering news because there isn't enough sports, and I think that's a shame. And I think people are looking for that escape, and they're just not getting it. There's no live sports, so you just got to do stuff. Although I am watching a great game at McCoy. It's behind me. It's actually a great photo that's on my green screen right now. But it's one of the best skylines, I think. It's an underrated skyline at McCoy.
It is, especially, in the middle of the summer when you're, right in front row of the press box, being able to look over the field.
Yeah, so I'll try to change up the green screen every show and have some type of different shot at McCoy. There's a couple really good ones I have. So thanks for watching. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, download, visit TrifectaNetworkSports.com. And, thanks for sticking with us during this lack of live sports. And I thought we'd be doing something very differently right now. I thought we'd be sitting here today talking about opening day, talking about, live action, talking about the roster. And obviously we can't do that. So we'll be creative. But
yeah, I think opening day, I think the game was originally scheduled for, I think it was 3 p.m.
Yeah. So I don't know we don't know what's going to happen. I have a hypothesis that there's not going to be as many minor league teams, and they're going to reshuffle sort of the way the system works in that aspect.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Interesting to see. But thanks for watching.